world, yeah.
Canadian actress Evangeline Lilly recently made waves with her statements on how we view masculine and feminine traits in society right now. She asked an interesting question. Why are we only applauding masculinity in women and villainizing it in men? And why are we only applauding femininity in men and debasing it in women? Why is a man who loves makeup, cries easily, and stays at home to tend to the domestic responsibilities valiant, but a woman who does the same is somehow pathetic? Anthony, what's your stance on something like this? That's a hot take.
Who's calling women pathetic for doing that?
Well, I would say that there is a slight push towards women saying, hey, women, you need to get out of the house, stop being a caregiver, go contribute in the working society.
I know, but I don't think it's pathetic. I mean, I think it's nice that we've encouraged women to get into the workforce or move on from the homemaking lifestyle. And over the course of the last, I would say, probably 40 years. My mother didn't start working until probably the late 80s. So we've made those changes. I think it should be encouraged, and I think it should be applauded for women entering the workforce.
Thoughts, guys?
Yeah, you're talking about like the boss girl narrative, the get the bag. I mean, at the end of the day,
the soft men narrative.
Well, yeah, and that comes from, I mean, in TV, we can look at two very stereotypical examples. We have like the Peter Griffin, Homer Simpson, where the husband is just like a buffoon who is utterly incompetent, and you have the woman who is, you know, kind of more put together in some cases. So,
good point.
Yeah, the boss girl narrative is just, it's only dangerous because the narrative implies I don't need a man. That's where that narrative ends. It's not because women are getting jobs or working. It has nothing to do with that. It's more so when you get to the narrative like, I don't need no man and, you know, I can just do everything myself kind of thing, when I believe we're evolved complements.
Now, if we shift away from the idea of men having to necessarily be super masculine, fast forward, say, 20, 30 years from now, is that cause for concern, potentially, in a male role?
It can be, right, if we want society to stay the same, right? And that's where it becomes, what is your stance? Do you want us to be continuing towards the direction that we're going, or do you want us to kind of go backwards towards where we were in the past? If you look at the need for women to be in the workforce, right, and the ability to actually have a dual income household, I mean, do you really think that we're going to have that if we're pushing the complete masculine mindset of the 80s, 70s, 60s? Probably not, right? But on the flip side, is that even possible anymore? Like, if you look at the statistics for what you need to actually be able to afford a home right now, who makes that kind of money? Right? Like, you need to have both people in the workforce. You need to have people both taking responsibility and both fitting those roles.
We can't eliminate masculinity in men. However, there is something to be said about women carrying a good form of masculinity as well. So is there really cause for concern when it comes to men becoming less masculine and women becoming more?
Depends on what the goal is. If the goal is to maintain the nuclear family, then we see divorce rates skyrocketing. We see divorce rates fall off a cliff when a man makes over $200,000 a year. So we see two-income households as being more likely, statistically speaking, to have a divorce and end up being a single mother situation in some cases.
So stick to the roles that I guess we were innately given?
But think of how many men take like paternal leave now, and the wife goes back to work. Think of how many people do that now. That's changed. Growing up, my dad was home before my mother. He cooked and did everything. My mom was home at 5. My dad was home before her. So I have a different experience in that regard, and I think that comes from that initial question a long time ago, is how I define masculinity. The gender roles were non-existent in my house. But I see a lot of men now taking time off to be with newborn children, and women are going back to work. If you want to call it the boss girl thing, that's very boss girl. I don't want to call it masculine, though.
So you don't see, there's no positive or negative to that, it's just the way that we're heading as a society?
It's evolution. It's naturally evolving.
I have an interesting stat on the whole women, or like a one-woman household. So 79% of lone parent families in Canada in 2011 were female-led households, meaning without a father, or at least without a traditional, consistent father in the household. Is this a push for a more sensitive male, the byproduct of female-led households? Like, are we aiding to more, sensitivity in men?
Well, we know that the likelihood of them engaging, like the children engaging in risky behavior, criminal activity skyrockets when it's in a single-parent, female-led household. So I would just say that's the only concern there. And obviously it's not necessarily the woman's fault in that situation if the guy left. I'm not blaming anybody, but it's just if the goal is to maintain a nuclear family, and I believe that like the bedrock of a strong society is based on the nuclear family, then I think whatever gets us closest to that is what we should be championing.
Right, right. Now, while part of our society seems to be entertaining, the idea that men should be more in touch with their feminine side, there's also counter movement with a very different ideology. We'll be right back.